Hello everybody, welcome back to yet another video. In today's video, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be reviewing the 2019 film Dr. Sleep. So in Dr. Sleep, what the heck? This is ridiculous. Anyways, as I was saying, what the hell? This is ridiculous. What? Sure, why not? So yeah, today in this review, I'm going to be joined by my good friend, Bradley J. So anyways, let's get into a Zoom call. So yeah, Bradley J, it's good to have you here. Thank you for offering to help out with this review here. So it's good to have you here, and we are going to be reviewing Dr. Sleep today. So I guess you can just quickly give me what your kind of first thoughts were on this film.
Doctor Sleep's a weird one. Having a sequel so long after the original film brings to mind Mary Poppins and Mary Poppins Returns, in all honesty. I know it wasn't that much of a gap, but it is odd that they took so long. But then when you look at what the film did, you can kind of see why it took so long.
Yeah, that's a good point, because it's I think it was 39 years after the original came out. And I think basically the exact same amount of time passed in the world, I believe. So I think that was very interesting how they kind of played the kind of delayed sequel into how they made the story, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense to me. I wasn't aware that it's the same gap in real life as it was there. It's a nice touch.
I'm not sure if it's the exact same gap, but I would assume it's very similar, if not. So I guess a couple of notes I had here is that I feel like it's very good at honoring the original without feeling like it's just a straight remake of it, if that makes sense. Like when we go back to the Overlook Hotel, I believe it's like a shot-for-shot recreation of the opening. It's just at night, and I thought that was really cool. I don't know if you felt the same way or not.
Yeah, I felt that. I felt very similar to that. The opening of the entire film starts with an aerial shot and that same main theme from The Shining. So it was nice that it paid homage to that, but it did move on and become its own thing afterwards, way into its own thing. When it got to doing the overlooks, again, the use of aerial shots, slightly different music, but yeah, it was kind of cool to see the Overlook Hotel. I know we'd only just seen one after the other, but I think for that reason we got to pick up a lot more on the subtle nuances.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point you bring up there. And in terms of just this movie on its own, do you think it holds up well by itself, or do you think you kind of need the first one to enjoy this movie?
Bit of both. I think you need a basic background of The Shining, but at the same time the film goes in such a different direction, going from this is a hotel that's haunted, built on an ancient Indian burial ground, all the way to essentially stealing this gift from kids. It's a much darker interpretation, and the first one was pretty dark to begin with.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, that we almost just expand on the universe. And yeah, well, you do kind of need the base knowledge of The Shining. I think that the story is enough by itself that I think they explain The Shine well enough, because we have Danny basically explaining everything to Abra. I think that was her name. He basically explains everything to Abra. So if you haven't seen The Shining, I feel like it kind of adds to the nostalgia, but you don't necessarily need it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, the fact that they are so far away from each other, the film kind of had to do that to draw in new people. And if it meant that people got to go back and see the original again, I think it's a good thing. As far as whether I like Doctor Sleep or not, you know what? The jury's out on that. There were bits I liked, bits I didn't, and I'm not sure if I liked it or not. That's weird.
As far as Doctor Sleep itself is concerned, I liked it for the most part. However, something I didn't like is I found the first act pretty bland, I guess. Like, it wasn't fantastic. We basically, I guess we got to see what happened after The Shining, but I just didn't find that stuff as interesting. And then once we actually got into the present day, I thought that's when it actually picked up, in my opinion.
It's almost felt like the first act was an epilogue to the original film. You had through ghost form, or through shining form, if you like, Dick Halloran explaining why they weren't just visions, which is good. I quite like the fact that that was explained, because it was not done in the first one. You got to see how Danny started to deal with these visions, these ghosts. But it did feel more like an epilogue to the other one. I think if you took off the first act of Doctor Sleep, tacked it on the end of The Shining, I don't think that would be out of place so much.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. It's almost like that's the first chapter, I think it was, because like this is split into chapters. The first chapter could almost be like the last chapter of The Shining, and that just kind of ties the two together, I guess, to make sure, yeah, these are the same universe. These movies are supposed to be with each other. I think that's a good point. Speaking of tying the first movie and this movie together using Dick, I thought that, I don't know, maybe I read too much into this, but I felt that Danny basically played Dick's role in this one. However, it was much better done, I guess, because I know in your review of The Shining, we talked about how Dick's like death at the end was kind of out of place, and how he's just kind of there to teach Danny, and then he's just gone. I felt like Danny played a very similar role where he's there to teach Abra. However, I thought he was handled much better in the end here.
Definitely. The death of Danny by the end is more a case of he has come full circle. His development is completely done. We've seen Danny now over two different films, one as a 5-year-old and one as an adult. And he's gone from, no, I'm never going to teach anyone this, to basically teaching and almost being father-like to Abra, even though Abra has a father, which, yeah. But I think that as a result, yeah, I agree. Danny was handled a lot better, and his death, which was necessary in the end, was done a lot better as well. I mean, let's face it, it's Ewan McGregor. He was going to do it well.
And like you said, he's kind of a father figure. He's more actually like, I think they call him Uncle Dan, I think, in the movie.
Yeah.
So like he's kind of an uncle. And then he kind of takes on that father figure once her dad actually does die, I guess. And like he just kind of takes her under her wing. And I thought it was really good how he went from alcoholic who wants nothing to do with Shining to through seeing what like Abra's going through, realizing that it's very similar to what he went through. And how Dick helped him, he needs to help her. I thought that was very good character development.
I wonder how much of himself he saw in Abra, and how much potentially he could have done if he'd been honing The Shining all this time instead of hiding it away.
So something I talked a lot about in our video of The Shining was that I love the cinematography. And I still like the cinematography in this. However, I thought that we lost a lot of the, I guess, nostalgic cinematography, I guess, if that makes sense. Like, The Shining is, like, I'd say it's known for its shots of following the characters around the hotel and panning around the hallways. And then, of course, the mirror shots that we see, like, 5 or 6 times. And just, in general, I felt like we didn't see any of that in this film.
Yeah, I can understand that to an extent, though. You've, instead of building everything in one place in the Overlook, you've now got this over hundreds of miles of places. You've got different locations. It's a very different kind of film. That's why it feels a bit off as far as the sequel is concerned. It doesn't try and mimic Stanley Kubrick, which probably not a bad thing, honestly. But at the same time, it doesn't really have its own identity.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I don't know. I just feel like the cinematography was a little bland in this one. Like, they still could have had, like, adapted those panning shots to make it feel like it's more, I guess, an open world instead of the hotel, but I felt like it was just a lot of shot, reverse shot, and just cutting instead of panning. And I just like pans and long takes in general, and I didn't see a lot of those in this film. And I guess the only time that I think the tracking, like following them around shots, was in chapter 6 when we got back to the hotel. And I liked that. And I like that we kept those exact remake shots until the end. However, I still would have liked to see them adapt those shots instead of just completely abandoning them, if that makes sense.
That makes sense to me, yeah. I mean, you like what you like. It felt more like a modern horror film than any kind of thriller that it was going for before. I'm not sure how Stephen King feels about this one. We know that he doesn't like the original film. He said that Kubrick didn't understand what a horror film is. I don't know how he feels about Doctor Sleep, but I think the cinematography, it could have been put in any horror film, really.
Yeah. And speaking of how you said it's made like a more modern horror film, there's a lot more jump scares in this one and a lot less of the slowly building the suspense. And I'm not a huge fan of jump scares. It does make for a slightly scarier movie, I guess, just because like you have to be on edge. But I think that the building suspense in The Shining is a lot more done than it is in Doctor Sleep.
Absolutely. I think the only bit that really got me was when they are killing Brad, and not just because it's my name, but the baseball boy, when they are killing him slowly. That really gets to me. I don't know if it's just because they're killing a kid, or because I'm a dad myself and I can sort of feel that. But that was the only bit that really sort of got me, that really horrified me, as it were. Jump scares, I mean, sorry, just to plug my own for a minute. I recently reviewed The Nun. It was nothing but jump scares, and it wasn't good, basically. So I think jump scares are a very cheap way of getting things, getting the scare. Actually, true horror are things that stick with you, and that's why the axe scene is so iconic in The Shining. That's why you remember things like the elevators with blood. You remember the actual horror, the fact that it turned Jack. Here, you don't have that. It's like you said, it's mostly just more jump scares.
Yeah, I think that's very well put, how jump scares aren't horror that sticks with you. It's the actual scenes that stick with you that are actually terrifying. And I definitely agree with you that the baseball kid being killed was the scariest part. And another scary scene for me, like I guess kind of scary, is when I can't remember what the guy's name is, but the really old guy in their group, when he dies, and then everyone's all sad that he's dying, but then as soon as he dies and his steam comes out, they all just rush his body, and I thought that was super creepy as well. Just how it shows how unhuman they are, and I thought that was a pretty cool scene as well. It's
very vampiric. And you know what? It was effective, because it's like, oh, this is really sad. Yeah, we kind of need to live, so they're very much, they're almost cannibalizing his steam, which as you said, it makes them show that they're a lot less human. It's a good point.
And something that talking about that scene just reminded me of is the girl from the beginning that got turned over to them. I thought it was weird how they used her character, because throughout the first and second act, it seems like she's kind of not really on board with their ideals and what they're doing to the other kids. But then they don't go anywhere with that, so I just thought it was kind of weird. It was kind of like some loose ends that they threw in, but just never revealed to us.
This was Andy who did the snake bites scar, wasn't it? Yes. Yeah, I'm totally with you on that. She was sort of resistant to the change in the first instance. I know that what they were offering her appealed, but when they were actually in the process of converting her, as it were, she was really fighting it. It really hurt her, and I think it's a lot of it was told, not shown, which is cinematography 101. You show, don't tell. And it was a case of, in the time between she being converted to when Abra was a teenager, I think it was 8 years, I think the film said. Yes,
Yeah,
8 years,
yeah.
because Danny got his 8 years chip. In that time, she was absolutely fine with it. It's like I could have used a bit more to show that she was okay with things, that she'd made peace with it.
And even still, 8 years later, she's questioning, like, you said we live forever, and it sounds like she's still questioning them. But then, again, nothing happens in the end. And I just thought that they should have either cut that or gone further with it.
Absolutely.
So, people who have watched my channel for a while know that I love dark tones to movies, and I thought that this one was, like you said, it's a lot darker than The Shining was, just with the whole steam / soul sucking and like just that whole thing with like hunting down kids and killing them. I thought that was a really cool. I love the tone for this movie because of that. I was curious what you thought about that as well.
Dark has its place, certainly. I think that if you're building on a movie that's pretty dark and pretty terrifying anyway in The Shining, I think that where do you go from there? Yeah, okay, have the house itself be vampiric, have it take away the shine, have it feed on that, and then have other people do that. It makes sense in the universe of the film. I like the explanations. I'm not sure that we needed a whole family of people feeding on that, but it certainly is effective in making you think, you're not supposed to like these people. You're really not.
So I guess you said that we're supposed to like those characters. Do you think that the performances of any of the characters helped with creating that?
I certainly think the performance of Rosa Hatt was done really well. She was someone who, as a villain, wasn't quite invincible. In fact, many times it looked like Abra was a lot stronger. And I think that it was really well portrayed. She was charismatic, she was calm, but when things didn't go her way, damn, she lost it. So really good, solid performance.
And yeah, speaking of that, I think something good about her character is how her motivations is just survival. She's not trying to get revenge, or she's not trying to just prove her supremacy over our other characters. She's just trying to survive, and I thought that was a really good villain motivation.
Definitely, it goes back to the vampire thing I was saying before. Vampires don't usually want to rule the world. They usually just want to survive by their methods, which to us is morally questionable.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point about the morals being just not what we're in line with. And I guess, what would you feel about the portrayal of the actors for all of our good characters?
I thought it was weird how sort of they tried to do Dick Halloran again, but whoever they got to impersonate Scatman Crothers did a really good job. Less so the person who's playing Danny's mum, who's so iconically done by Shelley Duvall. It didn't quite click with me. The young actress who played Abra, essentially she was the lead or the secondary, and I think she did an amazing job. And of course, Ewan McGregor's brilliant in anything. The only thing I'd say about Ewan McGregor is they missed a huge opportunity. Abra writes hello on the board. He should have replied with
"Hello there."
Yeah, that would have been great. Okay, so I think that's all I really have to talk about. Is there any last things you want to say in summary here?
As I said earlier, this film is... I'm still not sure if I liked it or not. I didn't dislike it, but at the same time, I don't feel that strongly about it. It looks like a big budget film, but feels like a straight-to-DVD film. I don't know, have you ever seen American Psycho and American Psycho 2?
I have not.
Okay, American Psycho is brilliant. Christian Bale spent years getting the part right, and he is the absolute quintessential star. I'd recommend that anytime. American Psycho 2 tries to follow on, doesn't quite make it, and it stars Mila Kunis, who, she's not Christian Bale. She's not going to cover that role. And it felt a bit like that, really. It felt like, it's like, we could make some money here, let's put out a film. But because they got such great stars, because there was such great production values, the budget was a lot higher. I don't know how successful it was at box office, but it just felt like a lesser sequel to me.
Yeah, I think that's true. It's not as good as the original. However, I still really like this movie, and I think it's still very well made. Just it follows on a lot of similar story points to The Shining, and so I think that definitely helps it. If it was just standing alone, probably wouldn't have been as good, but as it stands, I actually did really like it. As we get to the end here, I'll give a quick rating and why I did that. So I would give this an 8 out of 10. I think it's a very well made film. I would have liked more from the cinematography. Story-wise, I thought it was a pretty compelling story, and just in general, it's a really good film. Not as good as the original, which I would give closer to like a 9 out of 10, but yeah, an 8 out of 10 is still a very solid film. What about you?
I'm not usually one to give ratings unless I've come from the cinema. I do a quick review where I give things an A to E rating. If I'm going to give a rating out of 10, I'd say around about a 6. I do like what it does to pair it to the original one. It goes in a very different direction, and at times it can drag on. But overall, it's not a bad film. It's just not one that's going to leave a really strong impression on me.
The Shining obviously sticks with probably both of us, I would guess. And this one it's a good film for me, but yeah, it's just not going to stick with me as much. But yeah, that's been our review here. So thank you guys all for watching. Thanks to Bradley J for joining me on this video. Would you like to quickly plug your channel, say anything about it if you want?
Thank you very much. Yes, my channel, I do a monthly film review open challenge where everybody gets to nominate one film, and I pick one at random each month. But aside from that, I also do my own original writing. I'm an actor as well as a voiceover artist. So you might see all sorts of things pop up on my channel. And hopefully when the cinemas get back again, we'll be able to get back to my quick reviews.
So yeah, if that sounds interesting to you guys, make sure you check out his channel. As well, he has a video that should be posted at exactly the same time as this one, where the two of us review The Shining. So I'll have a card up here if you guys want to check that out. And yeah, thank you guys all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. If you want more updates on my videos, make sure to check out my Instagram, ntd_films. Thank you all for watching, and have a good day.